Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So before we get into how to pray and what do we recite into prayer, and I'm sure everybody is eagerly waiting for that because so far we've been learning everything, that is just prep work for the prayer. And this is kind of this lesson is going to summarize what we have learned pretty much, and because everything we have learned is actually condition of salah, a condition of prayer. So let's talk about what those are. Number one, the most important one is, and in fact all of them are important, but acceptance of Islam, acceptance of Islamic faith. Why is that? Because Islam means submission, and once you submit, then one of the ways you show your submission is, which is the pillars of Islam are salah. So what's the point of doing all the movements and praying and while you're not even a Muslim? And remember, acceptance of Islam mean taking your shahada, which we have covered in Islam in a nutshell course, which I highly recommend everyone to take if you haven't taken that. But that is something that is a condition of salah, that you have to be a Muslim before you can pray, because you can pray and say all the good things and talk to God in your prayer. He doesn't need that first. The first thing is you have to claim and submit and say that, yeah, I'm a Muslim. So acceptance of Islam is mandatory. Then intention. So a person could be doing exact same movements what we do in prayer, and he's just doing that because he wants a good exercise, even though he did outwardly exactly the same thing that a Muslim would have done, or a person who's praying. But if his intention wasn't to pray, then it's not going to get accepted. And this is the same case with your wudu, ablution, when you're washing up. If you're just like, yeah, I just want to take a bath because I feel dirty, then and you do exact same moves, it doesn't count as a ghusl, which we've already covered. You have to have intention that I'm about to pray, or any action. I'm about to do wudu, I'm about to do ghusl, I'm about to pray, I'm about to fast for the sake of God because it is His commandment. You don't have to say these out loud, but know in your heart, what are you about to do? And the key is intention. You're not about to exercise or do anything. The key is you're trying to connect to Allah, connect to God, and your intention should be that. Cleanliness. What do I mean by that? This includes cleanliness of the body, which means that, and again, what I'm talking about is not, you have to be in wudu. I'm talking, as I mentioned, that if, let's say, some impurities fall on your body, that doesn't mean you broke your wudu or your clothes. You just clean them up, and so you want to make sure that your body and the place of worship, place of prayer, and your clothes, these must be clean, must be purified. Okay, there's nothing that's we've already defined as what was considered dirty is on them. And then, of course, purification. When I say purification, this is what we have already covered is the ghusl. If you're in the state of major impurity, you will have to do ghusl. If you're in the state of minor impurity, then you would have to do wudu. And this is something we've already covered in the previous lessons when we covered the purification in Islam. The others, covering your aura. That's a new word that we're mentioning, but this is basically your so, like, let's say for men, we've already talked about when we talked about the dress of the worshipper, which is from his navel to between navel and knee, right? And for a woman, we talked about it's basically from head to toe, and except your hands and face. And something that we talked about in the dress of the worshipper lesson that we did. Number 6, facing Qibla. 7, timing of the prayer. So as you can see, we've already taught. This is Islam in a nutshell course. Intention we cover right now. Cleanliness, what's considered dirty, what's considered not. We talked about that. We went in detail about the wudu and ghusl course, and then we also talked about the dress of the worshiper, right? That course, and then we just talked about the facing the qibla and the sutra. What does it mean? Make sure that you are facing towards the qibla. Timing. We had a discussion on timing the five daily prayers that we have. What are their timings? And you have to make sure that when you're praying, and again, we're talking about obligatory prayers where the timing matters, and it has to be within that window of these 5 daily prayers. You can't be praying Fajr at Isha time. You can't be praying your morning prayer at nighttime. If you end up missing it, you have to make it up. But the key is you have to make sure that you take timing into consideration, because that is one of the conditions of Salah. Now, while we're at the topic of conditions of Salah, it is important to talk about what invalidate, let's say, actions that invalidate the prayer, okay, or your Salah. Now, number 1, talking during your prayer. Okay, you should be praying. When you're praying, you should be reciting what I'll be teaching pretty soon, what you should be reciting in your prayer. But if you deliberately, you're talking in your prayer, then your prayer is going to be nullified, and you'll have to basically start all over. Laughing, okay. You end up laughing in the prayer. You're praying and you thought about something, and then it ends up you end up laughing. That's going to break your prayer. Eating, don't be eating while you're praying. Okay. Drinking, of course, it's almost in the same category. Uncover. So the body parts that I mentioned, that are considered your aura or your privates, right? Or in the case of women, we talked about basically besides your face and your feet, your face and your hands, everything is being covered. And for men, from minimum is from their between their navel and knee, and of course that's the minimum, but you should try your best to be covering your shoulders as well. But let's say any of that minimum part is uncovered one's body, then that's going to nullify as well your prayer. Your direction. So if you end up shifting direction, you're facing towards the Kaaba, and all of a sudden you just end up moving, and now you're not facing towards the Kaaba, then that is going to also nullify your prayer. Any acts that are noticeable, right? Noticeable acts, outside of prayer. So let's say, in prayer, that you're not allowed to be doing jumping jacks, for example, right? You end up doing that, that's going to be breaking your prayer. So too much movements going on, which are not part of the prayers, then that is going to break your prayer. And we'll get more into detail about what those movements are. What do you do? But for now, just know that you end up doing any other movements besides the ones that you're doing in your prayer, that will be nullifying your prayer. If you break your wudu. So while you're praying, and let's say you end up passing gas, or we talked about if you really, really have to go to the bathroom, that also means that your wudu is not valid. If your wudu is not valid, which is one of the conditions of the salah, then it's going to be breaking your prayer as well. And also, if you end up failing to observe any pillars of prayer. What do I mean by that? And we'll get into what these pillars of prayer are. Right now, just know that these are the actions that will invalidate your prayers. But for example, one of the pillar of prayer is prostration. And again, as we've already been covering this whole topic of prayer in Islam, I'm talking a specific set of movements. Because a lot of times people will think that when we say prayer, it just means that you just raise your hands and you start talking to God. This is a specific way, certain guidelines, specific steps that we have. And one of the steps is prostration. And while you're praying and you end up not prostrating and you do all the other step and you don't end up prostrating, then that is going to invalidate your prayer and you'll have to pray again. Or at least make it up, but the if you miss one prostration, make sure you repeat the unit that you were praying. Again, everything will make sense once we start getting into how the prayer looks like. But for now, just know that if you end up failing to observe any of the pillars of the prayer, and one of the example is this movement of prostration, the step of prostration you end up skipping, and then that's pretty much invalidating your prayer, and you'll have to start your prayer again. So these are some of the conditions of prayer, and what are some of the things that can invalidate your prayer. And now in next lesson we'll get more into we'll be diving more into the topic of how to pray, how the prayer looks like, what are the the mandatory or the pillars of the prayer that you must be doing, those actions that you have to do in your prayer. So let's move on to the next lesson. Thank you.